Hello, I'm Nathan from the ebook reader blog. For this video, I've got the Boox Go Color 7 that I'm going to review. This is Onyx's latest color e-reader. It's got a 7-inch color e-ink screen. It's got the page buttons on the side. There's actually two of them. They're just really close together. So this one has the flush front screen. They also sell a white version that has an indented screen, but otherwise it's the same. The back has this kind of unique texture to it. Overall, the device feels really comfortable to hold. It's very thin. Kind of has a premium feel to it. On the side, you got the micro SD card slot, speaker, microphone, USB port, then the power button is on the bottom edge here. Overall, the hardware is pretty nice. And then the software, it's got Android 12, so it's got a lot of unique features, a lot of different ways you can set up the device. So you have the different tabs along the bottom for library view. You got the store. So it just has a few public domain titles. I don't really understand the purpose of the store. You can't buy anything there. So you can just navigate your storage like this, sort of more of a folder structure. Then you got the app drawer. It comes with Google Play, so you can install apps from there. There's no weird setup. Like some of Boox's older devices. You tap down from the top, you have the settings menu. So you have these different options here, and you can actually configure this. It's standard Android type of a layout here. You can configure what items you want to see from the quick settings menu. Then tap on the left side of the screen will bring up your notifications list. So I really like the navigation on this device. It's really fast and smooth. So they have the gesture navigation you can set up on here. And then you also have a navigation bar. If you wanted to use the navigation bar instead of gestures, then you have some different configuration options for that. But I really like the gestures because you swipe up from the right, it goes back. Swipe up in the middle, you go to your home. And then swipe up from the left, it'll bring up your app optimized settings, your refresh mode settings. So it's actually really smooth and easy to navigate this way. It's one of my favorite things about Onyx's devices, the whole gesture-based navigation. You don't have to hunt around different menus and different spots to tap. You also have some side gestures you can do as well. So if you swipe up and down the sides of the screen, you have different things you can set up for that. I have it set up for brightness and color temperature. And then the side buttons are configurable as well. You can set which ones you want to go forward and back. And then they have long press settings as well. So I have the app switcher set up. If I long press that one, I can just jump around to different apps quickly. So yeah, it really makes it easy. You can also, customize the duration of the long press. It's kind of cool. You have some different things you can set up as far as the display as well. So I have the large setup right here. So you got some different settings for this as far as the user interface. The standard I thought was kind of on the small side, so I jumped it up to the large setting here. You got the system fonts is accessible as well, so you can change the system fonts for the user interface. You can add some as well. So pretty cool how many different things you can set up on here. You got the different tabs you can set when you go to the home screen as well for which one is your actual home. And of course, it runs Android, so you got a whole bunch of different languages supported, 33 in total, it looks like. And you got text-to-speech on this device as well. Since it has a speaker built in, you don't have to use Bluetooth headphones or speaker, but you can use those if you want. But it's kind of nice having the speaker as well. You don't have to carry around something else. So yeah, it's pretty cool as far as the user setup goes, and I really like how smooth it is as far as just navigating. And it's pretty for an ink device. They're usually kind of wonky, but I mean it works pretty well. So as you can see right here, we're getting some flashing, but if you pull up the refresh mode here, we can go over to speed mode, and then it's going to be a lot smoother for stuff like scrolling. So there's a lot of different ways you can use the device. Different refresh modes help for scrolling, just makes it a little bit smoother. It doesn't refresh as often, so you can kind of set that up however you'd like. So yeah, really add some versatility with the Android operating system. You can install some different reading apps. So let's talk about the built-in reading app for a moment. So Onyx's Neo Reader app supports a whole bunch of different formats. So this is one of the public domain titles I downloaded from the store just for testing purposes here. Oh, there's also this navigation ball down here. You can use this to navigate as well, or you can set up different shortcuts on here. There are a whole bunch of different things you can use this for. And you can just jump around to your apps as well if you wanted to set it up that way. And so if you go into the settings, it has a different view right there, so you can kind of hide it as well. But you can go into the settings here, and then you can set each icon if you wanted to get rid of some of them. You have all these different things you can set up on here. There's like 4 pages of all these different settings you can set on the nav ball. You can also disable it if you want, so if you don't want to see it. Onyx also has the sidebar menu. floating sidebar. I don't really like seeing these icons on the screen, so I would go ahead and hide this personally. Same with that bookmark icon on the top. But yeah, all that stuff is configurable. You can get rid of it if you don't want it. Also has, the multicolored highlights, has 3 different types of highlights, and you have all these different color settings for the multiple highlights. And then it also has the different types of underlining as well. So in addition to highlighting, you can have like the dotted underlines, the wavy underlines. So there are some different options for that, a little bit more going for it than some of your other types of devices. So also has text to speech, this app does. So if you wanted to listen to your book read aloud, you can do that as well. The app works really well for PDFs. I'm not going to show it at all here, but they got so many user configurable settings for PDFs. The screen's a little small for PDFs, but also has the dark mode now. This is a new feature they recently added, so you can have the white text on a black background. But as you can see, it doesn't invert the menus or other parts of the book at all. So it's just the text. It's not going to work for like the dictionary or anything like that. But they finally added that, so it's good to see. So the device does have the front light with adjustable color temperature as well, so you can crank up the warm setting to get a little bit more comfortable to read at night. It's not as orange as some other devices I've seen, so I don't know. Front lights can vary a lot though, so might not stand true for all of them, but this particular one doesn't have the orangest setting compared to some other devices. But you can also turn the front light off. The camera automatically adjusts though for the light, so it's kind of hard to tell. But yeah, so you can install different apps on here. I uploaded a separate video showing the Kindle app in depth. I mean, I'll just show it quickly because I have a few comics on here, but I mean, the Kindle app does work fairly well. You got some different settings you can use to try to get it to run a little bit smoother, and the page buttons do work if you set them up for volume controls and then set the volume setting to work with page buttons. So, I mean, the different apps, it's going to kind of depend on each individual app, but you have these different settings here for like refresh mode. Like if you set the refresh to fast, you won't get the flashing so much, but then you'll have more ghosting. So it's just sort of a balancing act how you want to set up your device. I find that the Regal setting works the best, but it does flash more, but it has very minimal ghosting as far as using like a comic in this mode. So you don't have much ghosting, but you do have more flashing. But the Regal setting does seem to work pretty well. You also have some different like flicker settings that you can set up in the optimize setup. So it just sort of depends. And some comics kind of lay out better than others. This one kind of has like larger margins, so it's a little bit harder to read the text balloon. So it just kind of depends on how they're set up. So the device does have a rotation sensor as well. You can turn on and off, or you can manually rotate. So yeah, you can switch over to landscape mode as well if you wanted to read that way. So yeah, there are different options, and since it's got the page buttons on one side of the screen, you can have that set up to automatically rotate if you're switching left and right-handed reading. So that is kind of nice having the rotation sensor. So Cobo app, it worked pretty well too. I mean, not really a fan of some of the settings. Like they don't have like as nearly as many settings as like the Cobo e-readers, so your text isn't quite as good. But it just kind of depends. You have these different setup down here. So you have the different refresh modes, of course, but you also have the optimized settings for each app. So each app has these different settings that you can configure. Messing with the DPI can kind of help with the layout sometimes. You have different color settings in here. You can set up the page turn buttons and stuff like that. So you got a bunch of different user configurable settings for each app. So I don't want to talk about third-party apps too much. It's going to depend on each app, but let's talk about some of the built-in apps. They have the screensaver app, so you can set up these different types of screensavers. Like you can have a clock and a calendar on there, which is kind of cool. And the clock will update. Sometimes it kind of has weird dots when it updates. So you got these different settings for that, different layouts. You can apply your own pictures. So one of the cool ones is the transparent one. So it'll just show whatever was on the screen last. That one works pretty cool for, if you just want to look at something without having the device on. You also have different separate settings for power off screen. So you got some different customizations there. The Neo browser, so it has the web browser, and Onyx devices are actually probably the best as far as ink devices. Using the web browser, scrolling's pretty smooth. It just works pretty well. I mean, it's still ink, so it's not going to be nearly as fast and dynamic as like a tablet's web browser. But as far as ink goes, it actually works pretty well. Scrolling is pretty smooth. Definitely a step up from Kindle's and Kobo's web browsers. So it's definitely one of those things that can benefit from the Android OS here is just having a competent web browser. A lot of e-ink devices, they just have like an experimental web browser that barely works. But yeah, this one actually is pretty usable. It's just sort of going to depend on the different websites and different setup for that. And even videos will play. I know some people actually use this to watch videos. I mean, it's going to be jittery, but it's not on the fastest mode right now, so it kind of depends. But that is possible to actually watch videos a little bit on these devices. I mean, it's not going to be super smooth or anything, but it is doable in a pinch. So yeah, web browser is pretty good on Onyx's devices. The built-in app is pretty good. I like the gesture-based navigation. Third-party apps are not going to be as smooth as like a dedicated e-reader, just with refreshing and stuff. But the versatility, you got all this different stuff on the Android operating system with Boox devices, which is pretty cool. So it just kind of has some pros, some cons, with all these different apps that are not going to run as smoothly as like on a tablet, of course. But I mean, you can use these different types of apps. I was messing around with this drum machine app, and I mean, it does work. I mean, it's not going to be super smooth to navigate or anything like that, but I mean, these kind of apps can be usable on this device as well if you want to use it for more than just an e-reader. So back to the library view, you do have some different views for this as well. You have the detailed view, and then you have a list view, and then you have the cover view, of course, which is the default. So you have some different modes for that. The only thing I don't like about Onyx's default app is it doesn't support books with DRM, so you have to have DRM removed from everything to be able to use this app. But it works great for like PDFs and comics. You can crop the margins off and get the page to fit the screen more. It has some cool settings for that. So overall, it's a very versatile device, has some good features. The color screen is pretty good. Onyx does exaggerate the colors a little bit, so not going to be particularly accurate like I was showing in the comparison review earlier, but it's really a nice device overall. Operation is smooth. The built-in app is a little bit smoother than third-party apps. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Check out my other reviews of the Boox Go Color 7. Thank you guys for watching. Goodbye.